Okay, good afternoon. Welcome everyone on what's actually turning into a sunny evening. I think I see some blue sky out there now. Welcome to the 8th Annual State of the Harbor Forum. My name is Emily Molden. I'm the Executive Director of the Nantucket Land and Water Council, and I'm very pleased to have you with us. The Nantucket Land and Water Council, for those of you who may not know, has been around for quite a while, and we are a nonprofit organization on the island that's really dedicated to preserving the health of Nantucket's environment and community through the protection of the island's land and water resources. We're very pleased this year to be celebrating our 50th anniversary. We were founded in 1974. And back in the 70s, when we were first established, we were really focusing on land and open space protection. It was a little later in the 1980s when we really started to turn some of our focus to the protection of the island's water resources, specifically to our groundwater. We started monitoring the aquifer, the level of our groundwater, the amount that's down there sometime in the 80s, and we've been consistently taking those same measurements for over 40 years now. We also, in around 1988, 1989, we hired a firm that you'll hear a little more about today called the Horsley Witten Group. And we had them come over to help develop a water management plan for the island. And in doing so, they actually helped us to map the island's watersheds and to establish some of the island's first groundwater protection regulations. A little bit later on, in the 90s and into the 2000s, we also started doing some additional work on the health of our freshwater ponds, our wetlands, and ultimately also our harbors. Last year, we added water to our name. May seem a little late, a long time coming. And that was not only to honor this legacy of water protection that we have left in our wake, pun intended, but also just because of its obvious importance to the sustainability of the future of this island. We began holding these State of the Harbor forums in 2017, but this past year, as part of our 50th anniversary, I've been going through a lot of our old newsletters and annual reports, and I actually discovered that before my time with the organization, back in 1995, we actually sponsored a Nantucket Harbor Symposium free of charge to provide information on the health of the harbor. So thank you all for joining us this evening as we carry on this tradition of convening these educational opportunities. So I want to just take a moment to thank all of our sponsors who make this and other events possible for us throughout the season. And certainly to our funders and our partners, the Great Harbor Yacht Club Foundation, the Horsley Witten Group, the town, and the Land Bank, who you'll be hearing from this afternoon. I also want to give a shout out to our water fund founders. The Nantucket Land and Water Council also initiated a water fund in 2017 to specifically fund our water-focused programs and activities. And this water fund is still very much alive and well today. It funds our State of the Harbor forums every year, as well as quite a lot of our research and additional programs. This year, as in several years past, a number of our very generous board members have put together a challenge grant for our water fund. And I just wanted to give a little shout out. I think there may be some little envelopes on your chairs, but if anyone's interested in contributing to this challenge grant, feel free to talk to any one of us afterwards, and we'd be happy to help you out with that. And we also just can't thank our board and our water fund challenge donors enough. So this afternoon, we're going to be talking about stormwater. And every year, if you've attended some of our State of the Harbor forums in the past, we choose a different topic that's particularly relevant to the island and the harbor. And this year's topic is stormwater, which in many ways is all about pipes and drains. And to be honest, I was a little hesitant to try to hold a big educational event on a beautiful afternoon in July to talk to people about pipes and drains. So thank you for coming. But it is actually really important and relevant to the health of our harbor. I think that historically, Nantucket was really ahead of its time with its stormwater infrastructure and what was installed many, many, many years ago. But at the time when we put all these pipes and drains into the streets, which in those days were not necessarily even paved, it was really just to move water from one point to the other, to get it out of our way. And it was very effective at doing that. But over the years, as our technology has changed and the global and local culture has changed, the way we use our land has changed, that infrastructure that transports water for us now also serves as a conduit to transport contaminants and pollutants and some of the byproducts of the way we use our land. So there's certainly a need to upgrade that infrastructure. And I think that some of our speakers will talk a little bit more today about the importance of that, why we're doing it, and how we're starting to do it. One of the other reasons that this is particularly relevant is, as you'll learn, the town's made a little bit of shift in its stormwater management and how that's being operated under the town. And we're really interested and excited to hear about their vision for the future of stormwater and the impacts that that will have on the harbor. So we're really here to share with you some of the important collaborations that are already taking place with a number of organizations on the island and with the town in order to figure out how we can adapt to all of the changes that have taken place, and also certainly looking ahead to the changes that are upon us with climate and seas when it comes to stormwater and the health of our harbor. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our first speaker, Ann Kitchell. She's a principal and senior watershed planner for the Horsley Witten Group. She has, I think, over 20 years of experience in watershed planning, coastal zone management, green stormwater infrastructure, municipal program evaluations, and site design. She has an MS in marine policy and a bachelor's in marine science and biology. And Anne has been a very integral consultant for the Land and Water Council's work, specifically our policy work, for many years. And it's really great to have her here. So Anne, please.
Thanks, Emily. And just to clarify, you said that Horsley Witten did that groundwater study back in the 80s. That was before I was here. I think I was in high school, maybe, if you were trying to date me. But I was excited that you could get this many people in the room to talk about pipes and drains, because I love stormwater, and we do too at Horsley Witten Group. We're an environmental engineering and planning company all the way over in Sandwich. So, I traveled far and wide to get here today, and thank you for having us. I think my job is to make sure that everybody leaves here as equally excited about stormwater as I am. I know that's maybe it's not a tall child. Raise your hand if you were kind of hoping it was raining right now. See, I was too. So I think I just want to talk to you a little bit about what stormwater is, what the challenges are with it, why we care about it and have to deal with it, and then maybe talk a little bit about what some of the opportunities are that are pretty exciting about stormwater in the century that we find ourselves in now. How people managed stormwater. We judge ancient civilizations by how they did that. Rome and the Incas and Nantucket, apparently, fall in those categories, and we'll look back on what our great-great-grandparents did in the streets, and we will judge them for it. No, we'll learn from what they did, and it's, there's a lot of innovative new ways to handle stormwater now. So let's start with, what is stormwater and how does it impact your life here on Nantucket? So stormwater can have a lot of different meanings to different people, but to me, and I think what the context is in this conversation is, when it rains or snows, that water falls from the sky, and when it hits the ground here, it becomes stormwater. And what does stormwater do? It does basically one of three things. One, it goes into the ground, maybe. Two, it gets taken up by plants or it evaporates. Hey, how are you? And then three, it may run off the surface, and we call that surface runoff, and that's stormwater runoff. And when you have a lot of runoff across the surface, that's when you start caring about stormwater, right? So the picture on the right here is up near Lily Pond Park, up that way, Lily Pond Park, and to me represents stormwater runoff at its finest here on Nantucket. The picture on the left is down here at Easy Street, well, where I was earlier at the other yacht club, down by Easy Street. And this represents also a stormwater condition, but maybe the one on the left is a little bit more related to tidal flooding and coastal flooding. Maybe there's some stormwater from the sky in there too. And the one on the right is more about what's fallen from the sky. The ebb and flow of stormwater on Nantucket, however, it's sloppy, right? You have both of these things happening and they affect each other. And so you have, where I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. And when it rained at high tide, I couldn't get to school for a couple hours. So you have a little bit of that here too. So the coastal flooding is important for stormwater management. And it's becoming more and more important as sea levels are rising and groundwater levels are rising. But for our discussions today about green infrastructure, really I'm trying to talk more about what do you do with the stuff that falls from the sky. As I was just showing you about the coastal flooding, I love this map. I don't know where they came up with this or if the 1980s groundwater models had anything to do with it, but we talk about sea level rise all the time and how that is going to be impacting us and already is impacting us. We have our drainage pipes are out on the beach. And so as sea level rise happens, they back up and nothing drains uphill. The water is moving in both directions, but it's also moving underground as well. And we have septic systems. We have infiltration practices. We have all of this that has to be above groundwater in order to work. Your basements have to be able to be dry. I mean, as groundwater rises, your basements are going to become wetter and wetter. So a lot of the techniques that we use for getting stormwater back into the ground won't work in places where groundwater is rising. And I will tell you, this is one of the few maps that I've seen from a jurisdiction in the places that I work where we're actually predicting, and you have something that's predicting where groundwater levels are going to be. So sea level is important, but so is the groundwater. So what else about stormwater other than flooding concerns impact our lives? And I think the other big one, maybe it's first, maybe it's second, is water quality. So when it rains or snows, that water, when it hits the ground, it's going to wash off whatever we've left for it to pick up, whether it's from our cars, it's oils and gases on the ground, whether it's your fertilizer from the beautiful landscaping around here, whether it's dog poop or other kind of poop, whatever is on the ground, whatever the tourists leave, is going to end up in a storm drain and going out to your waters here. And so what does that do? So if you have polluted stormwater runoff, you're going to start to degrade the ecological communities that are out there. You might have limitations on your shellfishing. You might have limitations on your ability to eat fish. You might have cyanobacteria blooms starting. You have algae popping up everywhere. It limits your ability to recreate, to swim. Stormwater is not the only contributor to pollutants in the waters, but it is a significant one. So all of that equals losses of recreational use, economic losses, and takes a little bit away from wanting to be out here, on Nantucket. So how we manage our stormwater to clean that water before it discharges is really an important part of stormwater management. This is a map of your impaired waters. So folks in town go out, they monitor the quality of the water that's here. They're looking for bacteria, they're measuring nitrogen, they're measuring phosphorus, they're measuring all these other things that are in your water, heavy metals. And then sometimes if your waters exceed those values that are safe for life or recreational use, then your water body's labeled as impaired. And so on this map, this is your current map of impaired water bodies. Yellow is bad, red is really bad, and the green means it's either okay or we don't know. I can't see that far away as to what it is. But the point is that we're looking, and maybe if we looked in more places, we would see more colored water bodies on this map. Charles, sometimes you don't want to look, but sometimes you will. You're going to talk a little bit about the monitoring program here on Nantucket a little bit later. But it's not great. And when these water bodies are impaired, you got to do something to get the water quality back to a place where you can use it like it's supposed to be, and the critters can live in it like they're supposed to. So how does urbanization alter the hydrologic cycle? And this is really getting at the heart of what stormwater is and how you manage it. And I can't get to this graph over here because I'm tied to this, but I'm going to attempt to go through this graph with you. A hydrograph over here is showing the amount of surface runoff that you get when it's raining. That's the axis on that side. And then over time, that's the x-axis on the bottom here. So where those axes meet at 0, 0, say it starts to rain. So the dark blue shaded curve that you see, as it's raining, the raindrops are coming down, they're hitting the trees, they're not making it to the ground yet. Slow, you're not getting surface runoff yet. You start to get a little bit of surface runoff. The stuff's hitting the ground, it's soaking in, but it's not soaking in that much. It starts to collect on the pavement and then starts to run off. And as time goes on, you start to get more and more of that volume. So you can see the curve, how it comes up in dark blue. And then eventually, after it stops raining, you might see a little bit more, and then it tapers off. So that's in a natural system. That's where you've got meadows and trees and plants. But in an urban system, you don't have as much of that. You have parking lots, you have roads, you have rooftops, you have hard surfaces that prevent water from infiltrating and creating it. What it does instead is it creates more runoff that leaves via pipes, drains, those sorts of things. And what you see, the impervious surfaces, after you've urbanized an area, that hydrograph has a sharp peak on it. This is the one that's not filled in. It's just the blue line. So it starts raining and bam, you have a lot of water really fast because nothing's going in the ground. It's all just converted to surface. So it's coming, it's hot, it's dirty, it's full of stuff, and it hits your clogged drain and it just starts filling up the street. And you have a lot of it. When we started stormwater, when my great-grandparents started stormwater management, they were like, we got to deal with that peak. I want my parking lot. I don't want all that water. What am I going to do? I'm putting in drains and pipes and I'm getting it out of here. So that's what we did. We were really good at it. The Romans were really good at that too. But then my parents came along and they said, you know what? The problem with that is that now we're just taking all that gradu that's coming off that runoff and we're just putting it right out into the shellfish bed. We're not giving the land time to absorb it, clean it, do any of that. So while we might not flood as much, we're making the water quality so much worse. And so then my parents said, well, how did nature do it? Can we get back to that? And then my generation says, yes, we're getting back to that. We're going to use plants. We're going to learn from nature. And we're going to do green stormwater infrastructure to manage stormwater. And this is just maybe illustrates that a little bit differently. The image on the left is our drain and pipe and pond system of our traditional stormwater management. It's great. We're really good at getting floodwaters off, but all it does is move the pollution down to the water resource where we were like, oops, we kind of want that to be clean too. So what do? Well, let's learn from nature. And on the right, we try to mimic nature a little bit more. When the rain falls, we catch it on our roof and we try to slow it down and we put it in the ground. We let the trees take it up. We do those sorts of things. Probably still need pipes also. But this is where stormwater management is headed now. And this is some of the examples of the stormwater management projects you're going to see talked about a little bit later on, green stormwater infrastructure. So this is some examples of different engineered practices. This is our best way that we can figure out how to mimic nature. We call them, the first picture over here on the right is a bioretention facility. There's bioswales, biofiltration, bio-rain gardens, all of those things use plants and soil to absorb runoff and evapotranspirate it. And when you're doing that, you're not sending it on the surface back down to your embayment. It looks, it's landscaping. We've inverted our landscaping to hold the water, because green infrastructure is really about holding that water as long as you can. It's a resource. If I have this, I don't have to irrigate, right? I'm trying to mimic nature, trying to infiltrate, evapotranspirate, reuse this water instead of just sending it off the land, trying to fake nature out by copying it and acting like I haven't urbanized this area. Other practices on the bottom left include things like constructed wetlands. Can we recreate a wetland and use it to clean stormwater before it discharges to our embayments? Permeable pavements, alleyways that absorb water rather than shedding it off. Tree filters, street trees that actually capture your stormwater, clean it, infiltrate it, put it back up in the air. The next one is underground infiltration chambers. Not very green. They could have colored the pipes green, but it still is, we call it green infrastructure because it's infiltrating, it's trying to, and recharge is really important, trying to get that water back into our aquifers so we can use it later. And then smaller things like cisterns and rain barrels, things like that. Things that homeowners can do at their house to hold the rain. The thing about green infrastructure is that it's not just about managing flooding. It's really trying to realize those co-benefits that you get. Better habitat for butterflies and bees. Air quality, shade. Lord, shade it's a big one. Trying to have multifunctional uses of some of these spaces, kind of like at Lily Pond Park, or this wetland picture in the corner here. Can you make a stormwater facility into a park? More parks, less pipes. And I stole this one from the land bank. This is part of their envisioning of what you guys could do on Washington Street to be more resilient in light of climate change. Whatever. I just thought this was a really beautiful rendering done by Scape in the land bank. And what I love about it is that right in the top, we just walked past here to get to here. Right up at the top, two components to this plan are stormwater wetlands. I don't know if they're feasible there, but at least that's what we're thinking about. Where are the places in Nantucket where you can use empty lots, natural spaces, open spaces, recreational areas? Where can you grab stormwater to keep it out of your embayment, to slow it down? And so what are other places around Massachusetts or the world or the country? What are they doing that's really cool and innovative that you could steal here? There's other communities have been managing stormwater. Either they've been regulated to have to do it, or they've had water body impairments that they're trying to tackle. What are they doing to manage it? I'm going to give you some examples of some different types of stormwater municipal bylaws or regulations that I think are really cool. There's new climate data, like the groundwater elevation stuff that's available. There's updated design standards for the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook that are applicable here. And then there's dedicated funding mechanisms to help support municipal stormwater programs. I think you'll hear a little bit about that later today too. But all of those things added together give you an opportunity to have a better stormwater program and to do a better job here on Nantucket of making stormwater not one of the biggest problems, for water quality. So this picture on the left, this is Brewster over on the Cape. And I don't know if you can see it. The black line is Brewster, but the pink area is their federal or state regulated stormwater area. And in those pink places, if you're building something, you have to meet certain standards for stormwater, and the town has to do certain things to educate people about stormwater, to map their network, to monitor, to retrofit, things like that. And what they did in Brewster was they created a new stormwater bylaw and regulation that went, the state and the federal regulations require you to do stuff if you're disturbing like an acre or more. You have to do stormwater management. Brewster said, well, we don't have a lot of development that's an acre. We have impaired waters. We got to do something about it. We want our regulations to manage sites that are much smaller than that. So they created major and minor permits where this disturbance level is like 2,000 square feet of impervious cover. Now you have to do a rain garden, or now you have to do something else. So that's a really interesting bylaw that just went into effect like 2 years ago. And then on the right, the Stormwater Management Handbook has been updated to be more reflective of the statewide stormwater program. And it has stuff in it that ties, some of the standards tie the stormwater management that you do on site to whatever the pollutant of concern is right downstream. And so another example are stormwater utilities. This is just a dedicated fee system that residents and non-residential parcels have to pay into, like on a monthly basis or whatever, for to pay into the town for the stormwater management components of the town. When I first moved to Massachusetts, there were 2 stormwater utilities here. Everywhere I have lived, I have had to pay a stormwater utility fee, except here. And since that was like 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, now there's 20 in Massachusetts, and there's 30 in New England. And this is something that, I don't know if Nantucket, wants to look at this or not, but it is becoming more and more popular up here. And it's based on impervious cover. Most of them are based on impervious cover, how much you have on your site. And so what is the most exciting part of stormwater management here on the island is that you have this opportunity to use what others have already developed because they're required to do stuff. You guys aren't quite required to do that yet, but you got to look for those opportunities and take advantage of them. So the first one is looking at what these other communities are doing under their MS4 permits, which is the state or federal program that Charles will talk about. But they have taken it, they've made it so you have to do stormwater management, not if you're just in a wetland jurisdiction, but municipal-wide requirements. They have templates for model regulations, code, looking at your development codes, what could you do better, good housekeeping techniques, the street sweeping, how can you take, how much load reduction do you get from street sweeping? Cool public education messages. All those things are templates that you guys could take, and apply here if you wanted to. There's a lot of great examples of mapping, infrastructure mapping, and monitoring that I think would also be applicable here. And then I mentioned that there's cool data. I mean, the NOAA plus rainfall is what engineers have to use now. And this is the most recent rainfall. How much does it rain here and when you're designing your facilities? Up until now, we've been using data from the 60s. So this takes into account climate change. Local bylaws and regulations. What kind of development do you have here in Nantucket that is what you want to target with better stormwater management? Is it development that's greater than an acre? Or is it smaller than that? Is it redevelopment? You already have water quality problems. You have to figure out some way to get redevelopment to do better than what's currently there. Every time you move a house, maybe where you put it, you have to have a rain garden. I don't know. Evaluating sustainable funding options. And then there's a ton of money out there, grant funds that are available to do cool projects, restoration work. And these folks here have all tapped into some of that. These guys will tell you a little bit more about it. But I just think that you have so much opportunity here because you're not necessarily required right now to do stuff. So get ahead of it and figure out what Nantucket wants to do. And that's just a little bit about stormwater. And I want to leave you with a challenge because it's not raining right now. But the next time it rains, I want you to walk around your house, put your slicker on, walk around your house and see where the rain is going. What's hitting your roof? Where is it going? What's hitting your driveway? What's hitting the street out in front of you? Are you contributing to a flooding problem down the street? Do you have a storm drain that's clogged? Do you need to dig it up? Is there a space in your yard to put in something that'll hold or infiltrate rain? Are you putting too much fertilizer on your yard? Can you stop doing that or do something else? Can you flip your landscaping from raised to depressed? So just think about that. Walk around, check it out. But I love stormwater, and I know you want this mic.
Thank you, Anne. Thanks very much for that perspective, more regional, big picture perspective. So now I'm really happy and excited to welcome the town of Nantucket's new stormwater manager, Charles Johnson. In a former life, Charles did math and marine tech teaching at some schools off island. He has a BS in civil engineering. He's a professional engineer in multiple states throughout New England, including Massachusetts. And he's been with the town's sewer department for quite some time now. And I'm very pleased to introduce him as the town's stormwater manager. Charles.
Thank you, Emily. As Emily said, I've been with the sewer department for 7 years now. Started as a sewer operator, and about 3 or 4 years ago, I was talking with my boss, David Gray, who's back there somewhere, about stormwater and how nobody in Nantucket working for the town was addressing some of the needs for stormwater. And we came up with an idea. It's like, maybe we should take it over. We know pipes. We know how things flow through pipes. You know, it can't be that much of a deal. So we started looking at the existing stormwater infrastructure, and here's a picture of some of the stuff we found. This is one of the outfall pipes that are going out into the harbor. The stormwater infrastructure dates back to the 1890s. On Orange Street, there are cast iron curb inlets into a system that's all beautiful brickwork and everything, but it's 130 years old. The system wasn't designed as a complete unit. It was put together piecemeal over time. And besides some catch basin cleaning, there was little or no maintenance to it over time. We looked at the infrastructure mapping that we had, and a lot of it was done in the early 2000s. We have some paper maps going back to 2006, and those were used and just transferred to GIS layers in 2018. But all the material, the information that was on that paper is now on the GIS. It's no more accurate than what it was on the paper. And DPW did update some of the GIS mapping, but for the most part, it's pretty inaccurate. So we started questioning, what have we done? Looking at the regulations on stormwater and how stormwater is regulated across the country, it goes back to the Clean Water Act, like the Nantucket Land and Water Council. It's about 50 years ago. And it's under the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit. It's pretty wordy, so the acronym is PS4. It's authorized to discharge under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System that was with the Clean Water Act, and it was delegated to the states by EPA. And this has taken place in 2 phases. First phase was for medium and large cities, and those were listed under the 1990 census, medium large cities. And phase 2 was Phase 2 was implemented in 1999 for smaller municipalities, and they're the urban areas listed under the 2010 census. So we look at the map across the United States. These are the urban areas and urban clusters listed under the 2010 census, the population. So that you can see that under the purple areas, those are the urbanized areas, and the small green dots, one of which is sitting over Nantucket, is an urban cluster. In baseball, so they're looking at the urbanized areas. Those are going to be regulated under the MS4 regulations. In baseball, we have this thing called the on-deck circle. And that's what I kind of look at the urban clusters as being. It's kind of like you guys are next to be regulated. It hasn't come to fruition at this point, but this is an area showing a map showing the areas that were automatically designated by Mass DEP as MS4 Phase 2 municipalities. So these are the areas that are regulated to do all the requirements under MS4. And you can you see on the Cape, most of the towns on the Cape are included except for Provincetown and Wellfleet, the eastern half of Massachusetts, and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And I've asked the question, why not? And I haven't gotten a good answer yet. Now, it's all somehow related to population, but some of the population on the Cape is no more populated than Nantucket. So under those requirements, basically, MS4 is a planning guideline for managing your stormwater. So the towns are required to write a stormwater management program. You know, it's something that every town should do anyway, but they're required to write this. They're required to, down below, a written illicit discharge detection and elimination program, which basically is looking at any cross-contamination from sewers. The sewer systems used to be combined way back when they were designed. After the Clean Water Act, they were separated, and we have storm sewers and separate sanitary sewers. It requires written operation and maintenance procedures and programs for your stormwater infrastructure. So after so long, after the life expectancy of a catch basin, you replace it. So none of this stuff is rocket science, and it's a basic planning guidance document. It also requires mapping, better mapping that we have on paper. You want to show all the stormwater treatment structures, all the outfalls. Looking forward, you have to go to GIS mapping, and it's just basic planning and housekeeping. So it's nothing crazy. On the water quality side of things, the state started looking at the state of the estuaries in Massachusetts in the early 2000s. And in 2006, they put together, under this Massachusetts Estuaries Project, this MEP document. And it took a look at the nitrogen loading of Nantucket Harbor and Nantucket Harbor. And they came up with findings, and they looked at sources of nitrogen, which include, on the left, from septic systems, in the middle, from stormwater runoff, which goes, overland, and then fertilizer, which goes into the groundwater and eventually goes into the harbor. Now, this was all using basic land use rule of thumbs and everything. It was scientific, but it wasn't very exact. But out of that study came a couple of recommendations. There were others, but these two I thought were important. For both coliform and nutrient issues, direct discharge of stormwater to the harbor should cease. And the second one, runoff from impermeable surfaces should be discharged to vegetated surfaces where possible. So it's the same thing that Ann was talking about under her presentation. We've got a problem with the stormwater runoff. We should put it someplace else other than right into the harbor where we're taking shellfish from and eating them. So 20 years ago, they gave us this idea, and then they continued with a couple other documents, the Nantucket Harbor Total Maximum Daily Load, TMDL, both for nitrogen in 2009 and for pathogens in 2020. So they did a lot of study. What have I done? Sorry about that. So they looked at the inputs of nitrogen into the harbor, and so this was back in 2009, what the inputs were there, and they compared it to a limit that they thought that the watershed could handle without affecting water quality. So what was being put in there was a lot more than what they thought the harbor could handle. And they came up with the percent reductions that they thought that Nantucket had to look at. On the waste, and this was all nutrient loading, nitrogen, basically. On the wastewater side of things, we've been looking at wastewater management through a couple documents. The Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, CWMP. The initial one was done in 2004. It was updated in 2014. And we're due for another, I'm getting ahead again. We're due for another update, and we're looking with a consultant we've got a meeting set up with DEP to take a look at updating the nitrogen loading into the harbor to include the development that's taken place since 2014, which has been significant, especially to the north of the area that's sewered, like Pocomo, Quays, Wawinit, that area. And then also the upgrades that we've done to the sewer system. Areas in Shimo we've included into the sewer system. So there's pluses and minuses, but there has been change, and we've got to look at that and update the CWMP. On the septic system regulations, the times, they are changing. I don't know if you have friends on the Cape, but the Title V regulations have changed. Last year, they became effective, and any existing systems have 5 years to upgrade their systems to what is called an innovative alternative, or IA technology system, which basically is a mini sewage treatment plant in your yard. It does do a better job, at least as it's tested. Any new construction has to go directly to the IA systems. The only other option for all the landowners going that route is towns can elect to apply to DEP for a watershed permit. And a watershed permit, okay, let's look at the nitrogen sensitive areas. Dark green is the area that was designated last July. The area up Wellfleet, there's a teal color that is proposed. It was proposed in 2022 to be added. It was added last September. So they are a nitrogen sensitive area. And the light green are areas that will likely be included as nitrogen sensitive areas, including Nantucket Harbor and Nantucket Harbor. And when I asked members of DEP when that might happen. It's pretty clear it's going to be within 5 years. So the options are this watershed permit or have everybody go to IA systems, which is not a cheap option. The requirements for the watershed permit are not huge. The town would be in charge of looking at all the inputs to nitrogen, and we would have to study the existing and projected nitrogen loads over a 20-year period, and it would include everything: wastewater, stormwater, fertilizer, all the inputs. So under the Title V, if we just went to IA systems, we wouldn't be including stormwater or fertilizer into the loads that we calculate. I mean, basically, we're just doing what we could. The town, I think, should be responsible and take over for the self-regulation of our watershed. We would need to propose technologies for reducing the nitrogen load over that 20 years, and we would be held responsible. We've got to come up with a schedule over the 20 years with cost estimates and a monitoring plan. After that 20-year period, we would reapply with the information from the monitoring plan and go from there. So I know I'm running late. I'll try to run through this. Looking at the vision for Nantucket's stormwater, the first thing is to establish an enterprise funding source for the stormwater maintenance and operation, similar to what Ann said other towns are doing. And I think we should be following the MS4 requirements and self-regulate ourselves. But follow the MS4 requirements because it's a good planning, a good checklist of what we should be doing. What is required of towns under MS4 is just what we should be doing. We should develop and implement a stormwater management program. We should initiate that illicit discharge detection and elimination program and make sure there's no cross-contamination. We want to take a look at all our discharges into Nantucket Harbor. We may want to eliminate some of those or at least treat before we discharge. And we should upgrade the mapping of the stormwater infrastructure. So what have we done since the fall of 2022? I think the most important thing that we've done is we started collaborating with Nantucket organizations, such as the Land Bank, the Land and Water Council, Mariah Mitchell Association. And 2 years ago, we started cleaning catch basins and pipes in the downtown area, videotaping some of the pipes to see what conditions they were in. They established the position of stormwater manager, which I filled in January of this year. We've been doing modeling of Children's Beach watershed, and we partnered with the Land Bank for an EPA SNEP grant, and it's for the Lily Pond stormwater improvements, and it includes created wetlands to treat stormwater. It also included a feasibility study, which we've started it, but we'll be doing some field work next week to look at green stormwater infrastructure possibilities for the downtown area, where we can take the existing stormwater. Some of it will be treated in areas like the constructed wetland that was built here, just outside here on Washington Street Extension 25 years ago, but neglected, and it's not operational anymore. Okay, we started drafting stormwater regulations with our consultant. We've started updating the mapping, the GIS mapping, and we partnered with Nantucket Land and Water Council, and we went for a Mass DEP grant, for a water quality grant, to start a sampling program for all the outfall discharges into Nantucket Harbor. And this would be a 2-year program where we would get a baseline study going for nutrients, bacteria, metals. And so we worked on that, and late winter, early spring, we submitted it and we got it back and we weren't selected. So went to Emily, and so we said, what are we going to do now? And she said, well, I've got a couple people I want to talk to. Maybe we can pull something off. So she went to the Great Harbor Yacht Club, and they came to our rescue. So they provided financial backing with a grant to provide us with sampling equipment, these composite samplers, which will be placed inside of manholes with flow meters, and we're able to do this composite sampling where over a time period, this sampler will pull samples and put it together in a bottle that we can run samples from. At the same time, these flow meters will tell us how much flow is going through the pipes. Here are the sampling sites. This year, we're going to be doing Children's Beach, Easy Street, and Washington Street. Next year, we'll add the Town Pier and Orange Street at Consu Springs. This is one of the discharge structures right outside here on Washington Street Extension. It's part of a constructed wetland that was built in the early 2000s. And although the engineers meant well, they didn't provide anyone in the town with any operational and maintenance schedules. And if you go out there now, it's overgrown with Phragmites, and it does not serve its purpose. So we want to take that back, and we've got the approval from Concom to go back in there and restore it and eliminate the Phragmites and put in wetland vegetation. And calculating the load that's required for under the TMDL is just a calculation with that with our concentration that we measure with our sampling and the flow measured. If you multiply those two things, you get a weight over time measurement, and that is the load. So we can convert that into kilograms per day or pounds per year, whatever we need to compare that to the TMDL. And our sampling program, let's see, the main thing is creating a baseline for data to show what is the loading is now going into the harbor, and anything that we do to improve that over time can be measured against that baseline and see what kind of improvement we're looking at. It'll also inform the town for future planning, and we can use over time what these structures, how much treatment they're providing, and go towards that TMDL load level. And the parameters, we're looking at bacteria, phosphorus, nitrate, nitrogen series, metals, suspended solids. And Nantucket Harbor is an impaired water body, and we've got to take a look at the nitrogen loading. And I just wanted to show my Great Harbor Yacht Club fan club little medal here that I got a couple days. Thank you, Great Harbor Yacht Club, for putting together our sampling system and making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Really, really appreciate you sharing that perspective on where we are at as a community with our stormwater, and from a regulatory perspective, what we have in front of us and some of the options and opportunities that we have, especially as we all start to collaborate more and work together. So next, I would love to bring up as our final speaker, Rachel Freeman. Rachel is the operations manager at the Nantucket Land Bank. She has been working in the environmental field, mostly on Nantucket, for over 20 years now. She has a MS in plant biology. She is definitely one of the island's go-tos for all botanical inquiries. So you can remember that about her. She previously served as a research supervisor at the Nantucket Conservation Foundation and also as an owner and consultant with Laurentide Environmental Services. So these days, she largely oversees a lot of things, planning, project management, and permitting with the Nantucket Land Bank. And she's going to share a couple of those projects with us that are particularly relevant. And again, I think really emphasize the collaborative efforts that we're all working on, sort of putting our heads together on how we can start to address this mammoth issue of stormwater improvements. So Rachel, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm just want to say before I start that working with Emily and Anne and Charles and collaborating together has just been incredible. So that's really, as they said, but I'll just echo that. It's really one of the most exciting things that's come of this entire stormwater discussion for me. So tonight I'm going to be talking about green infrastructure on Nantucket and specifically combining and ways that the land bank is combining stormwater management with our public park design. I'm going to be emphasizing two different projects. One is the Lily Pond restoration, which I have talked about before, so maybe some of you have heard about it, but we're a little further along in our process. It's a huge project it's multi-year. And then I'm also going to touch on a project at 65 and 67 Easton Street. We recently completed the installation of the Land Bank Rain Garden there, and this park is growing in as we speak, and it's going to be evolving over the next year, but I'm excited to talk to you about where we're at with it. So, starting with Lily Pond. Lily Pond Park, which before doing this project, assumed everyone on the planet knew where it was and had been there. The Lily Pond Park is right here in downtown Nantucket. Just to give you a point of reference, here's Children's Beach, the Steamship Authority, and you can see a lot of intensely developed areas surrounding this park. It's about 6.5 acres, and the land bank first purchased a portion of it, or the largest portion of it, in 1986. To start, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Lily Pond's land use history. It's just too interesting not to go over, and it plays a huge role in why we're doing some of the things that we're doing today. Native Americans were really transient in this area for an extremely long time, but it sounds like they probably settled and had established some permanent settlements on Nantucket about 3,000 years ago. The English settlers came a lot later. In 1659, we had Thomas Macy arrive as the first homestead on Nantucket. And it's interesting because Lily Pond is mentioned just about at that time in the history books. So I pulled this map. It's from 1782, give or take. It's kind of an interesting map. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. But anyways, I think the point I wanted to make is Lily Pond was originally Wesco Pond, right? And I think that little stream right there is Wesco Brook. And the reason I think that is because that's what fed Lily Pond. So it was a tidal pond. And Wesco Brook, which later became Barzillai's Creek, came in from the ocean, and then what they did in 1665 was they actually installed a fulling mill there. So this harnessed the energy of the tide to actually, I believe, grind grain. And I think it's really fascinating. So then along came Love Paddock, and she might be one of my favorite people in Nantucket history. So apparently she had the capacity to dig a ditch around the fulling mill, which then resulted in draining Lily Pond in one evening. And I think the really interesting part about it is she didn't say anything about this to anyone, apparently, until she was on her deathbed. So the entire neighborhood must have woken up one day and basically been like, where the heck is Lily Pond, right? So it was just gone. It was originally an open watershed, and then it turned into a wet meadow. So just to go through the chronology and show you a little bit about Lily Pond then and now. This is Lily Pond now, as we just showed you. And Westchester Street, North Liberty Street, and Lily Street are the streets that bound it. So in the 1660s, this fulling mill was installed right about here, what is now Chester Street. We think it was right around that area. And then we're assuming that Wesco Brook kind of came out from there and headed towards Children's Beach. And that was the tidal brook that actually fed this pond for a while. And then Love Paddock managed to drain the whole thing, apparently. I believe at this time, Lily Pond was known to be almost 3 acres, so it probably exceeded the boundaries of this yellow circle and went up closer to the fulling mill. These are some dates that we don't really know, but some areas I want to highlight. This was Gardner's Island, which became Gull Island. It's extremely high topographically. It's just kind of a neat area of Lily Pond. And then this right here is North Water Street. And apparently the dune land came all the way up to North Water Street. So basically this was all beach and has since been developed and filled. Similar to that, the area in here was also developed and filled at one point, or filled then developed, I guess. So because Lily Pond was drained, it became an agricultural center, actually, as with most of Nantucket. And so it started to be mowed for hay shortly after Love Paddock drained the pond. And so in the 1700s, and then it was mowed pretty much for hay into the 1900s. I think this little tidbit, too, is just a fun fact. This is the location of American Seasons today, but it became the North Shore Restaurant in 1943. So it has actually been a restaurant for, 80 years, which is kind of neat. Again, the land bank purchased 8 Wesco Place, which is the bulk of the Lily Pond property, in 1986. So basically, we've watched Lily Pond over time, and we've seen increasing amounts of invasive species. We've seen increasing amounts of water in Lily Pond. It's gotten harder to walk in these areas. And so we started to think, what should we do to restore Lily Pond? What should our project goals be? So we came up with a couple major project goals. We didn't know how major they were, but the first one being the pre-treatment of stormwater. And this I'm really going to delve into, and that's why I'm here tonight, is because there's a tremendous amount of water that flows into this area, and stormwater in particular. So if we are able to improve the water quality before it goes into the wetland proper, and then before it ends up in the harbor, we're really benefiting everyone. We're also looking to not necessarily have water stagnate and sit in any one particular area for a long time, but increase the flow through the pond and through the park itself. We're looking to improve habitat. I have completely changed my tune from removal of invasive species to reduction of invasive species. I'm getting to be a realist in my old age. And we are hoping to restore some native plant species as well. Because we're the land bank, and one of our favorite things to do is public access and public parks and having people be outside enjoying nature. We are really looking to also maintain and expand the public enjoyment of this property. That's always at the top of our list. So how did we come about developing this project? Basically, we saw that Lily Pond is naturally low-lying, right? And it has been altered since the 1600s and probably before that, but it was really altered starting in the 1600s. There's a huge amount of anthropogenic influence in this area. And with that has come a lot of stormwater runoff, as Charles mentioned. We, and Anne actually, we urbanized and we created a great stormwater system. And we started to pipe stormwater directly into Lily Pond. So it wasn't just naturally draining in there, it was directly and concentratedly bringing pollutants to Lily Pond, which probably affected the health of the Lily Pond ecosystem. And then one of the major reasons this is important to us is it outlets into Nantucket Harbor. We just listened to Charles talk about TMDLs and our impaired water body as our harbor. And, we have these really lofty goals, which are important, and I think we can meet them. But everybody's got to do their part, right, Charles? So this is, I think, really interesting, but I love stormwater too. So this is Lily Pond Park, and Anne actually and Horsley Witten worked really hard to create how much water is coming into Lily Pond. So these drainage areas, which go as high as Something Natural in Coffin Park and as far as Main Street, all pour into Lily Pond Park. There's approximately 7 of them. Well, not approximately, there's just 7 of them. And then similarly over here, we trucked around in Lily Pond and dug around and spent a lot of time in waders looking for where these pipes come out in Lily Pond, and we found 6 of them, which is super exciting, but there are 6 stormwater pipes that outlet into Lily Pond in varying states of disrepair. But Charles is going to fix that. So anyways, and there's a single outlet that goes out, also something we're working on. Now we get into our green infrastructure. I think you guys pretty much understand what green infrastructure is, so I'm going to fly through this. But green infrastructure is fantastic for the land bank. It's a perfect fit for us. We love public parks. We like nature. We love ecosystem services. So this is a situation where we can actually utilize nature and have it benefit us in the end. And we can create these amazing public parks with these super creative, interesting habitats and benefit wildlife and benefit people. So, however, everything has its limitations, right? So one of the things that I just wanted to bring up is that in order to really benefit everything and really clean stormwater and do as much as we can, we have realized that we really need to be pairing gray infrastructure, pipes and drains, with our green infrastructure. And because green infrastructure can help manage flooding, as Anne said, it will not eliminate flooding, right? We have high groundwater table here. It's not going to eliminate flooding. It can help to remove pollutants from stormwater, but so can a water quality unit underground. So we can really work on these things together. And it requires a lot of ongoing maintenance, but actually the land bank is we have just this incredible team, so we're actually very good at maintenance. So this is why this is the perfect project for us. And it pairs well with public parks, which is the other reason that these types of green infrastructure projects work well for the land bank. This is our plan for Lily Pond. The highlights are the looped boardwalk, which is a change. Right now there's no loop, and everyone loves a good loop. The other thing is that we have 2 different types of wetlands here, you'll see. There's 2 constructed wetlands, one here, and 3 restored wetlands. The difference is the constructed wetlands are outside of the wetland proper. So this is already a wetland, right? But the restored wetland is within the wetland existing. And basically we'll be removing sediment and removing invasive species and doing some work to improve that portion of the wetland that is already wetland. This one is lawn right now, but it's clearly wet most of the year. So it will turn into an actual wetland. The constructed wetlands here and here are these areas of pretreatment, right? So we're capturing stormwater on North Liberty Street over here, and over on Lily Street that's running down this hill, and trying to pre-treat it before it goes into the wetland. I'm going to focus for a second on the main entrance to Lily Pond, which is on North Liberty Street. That's our parking area, and this is the section of the project that we actually received a SNEP EPA Region 1 grant for, in combination with Charles and the town's feasibility study. So this is kind of where we're starting, and we're really focusing in here on stormwater and water quality. This is the back of the napkin sketch that started all of this for our main entrance to Lily Pond. Here is the parking area. And this actually right here is North Liberty Street. And then this is walking into Lily Pond. So what we have here is a stormwater quality unit, which is a gray infrastructure, and similarly over here. But then you can see that this is our constructed wetland, right? And so what we're doing is running this water through and into the constructed wetland. This comes from 2 catch basins, one here and one over here, and this is where the water's entering Lily Pond in this area. The water will overflow from the constructed wetland into the restored wetland. And we're working very hard to have accessible paths throughout the park so that it is an achievable walk for anyone. So this is a cross-section, basically looking from here. So if you're standing on North Liberty Street and you're looking down from the sidewalk, this is what it would look like, right? Here's our path, then our constructed wetland, our path again, and then the restored wetland here. Just a cross-section, give you an idea. And now Charles talked a little bit about this, but we are working extremely closely with Charles and Horsley Witten on doing the water quality monitoring that they're basically doing on stormwater coming into the harbor. We're going to do that here because what we want to know is we want to know what impact is our constructed wetland having on water quality, stormwater quality. So we have water coming in over here, as I said, and water coming in up here into the lily pond. And Anne worked incredibly hard to design this ever so complex set of monitoring plans. We actually have 3 water quality monitoring or ISCO samplers in different areas. One is over here, and that is before it goes into the water quality unit here. So we're trying to find out what's in the water that's coming in off the road. Right? And then it goes down here and it joins with this water coming off the road. So then we have one here that says what's coming from all the roads, right? And what's it like after it's gone through this water quality unit, but coming from all the roads right before it goes into the constructed wetland. And then we have one here, which is where it overflows from the constructed wetland to the restored wetland. So we say what's coming out, right? And we're going to test all the same parameters that Charles is testing. And we're really curious what is going to come of this. And this is actually going to begin in a month or two in terms of us just trying out these systems and seeing how we do this sampling. It's new to us and it's exciting. This is the timeline for the project. So right now we're in design, development, and permitting. We're about 75% through. We are looking at finishing that up this winter, starting construction documents and bidding, and that will take us through the summer of 2025, and which time we, I think it's probably most realistic to say that we're going to start construction in the winter of 2025, but one can always be ambitious. So there we go. Let's see. That is the Lily Pond project, and this is it's a large scale project. I would love to touch on 65 and 67 Easton Street for a moment because it's super fun and we just finished it, although it's not really done. The construction is done, but now comes the important maintenance and tweaking component. 65 and 67 Easton Street, interestingly enough, is right here, so Lily Pond, the water comes here, goes underground here, goes this way and all the way out to Children's Beach. Easton Street similarly goes to Children's Beach. So looking at this project, this is far smaller scale, obviously. And what we were trying to do, though, is very similar to what we've done at what we're designing at Lily Pond. And it was fantastic to do this first because it gave us a little bit of a trial run to see what works, what doesn't work, how we want to shift things around. So what you have over here is a restored wetland. Notice the red line. So this is actually a wetland anyways, right? It was always a wetland. It will always be a wetland. Then outside of the wetland, have a constructed wetland adjacent to a public park. So one thing that's neat about this is that we're trying to invite people into checking out, the constructed wetland. We're trying to say, hey, come take a look at this, and interact with this constructed wetland. The way that this one works is different from Lily Pond. We don't have any pipes coming in here, but what you can see is here we've actually cut a hole in the curb and we're allowing water to flow in from the road. So when you see that flooding on the road, we're actually encouraging that stormwater to come directly into this constructed wetland. And then it will either overflow in large storm events, it'll either sit here and just infiltrate, or in large storm events, it will go into the restored wetland and sort of go out this way, or it can even overflow this way. But I just want to show you what that looks like. So again, just finished. not finished, that's not the right word. I don't know what the right word is, but really getting close. Construction is done, how about that? This is a picture of a small rainstorm we had the other day with the hole in the curbing, right? And so you can actually see how the water is going in between the cut. And what it's going onto is these stones right here, which you can then see from the other side. So this puddle is flowing in through here. You can see the debris that's been caught here, which is exactly what it's supposed to be doing, right? And then the water will meander over these stones through here, and then it will enter into this constructed wetland. So you can see here's the puddle, here's the stone path, followed by the constructed wetland filled with amazing wetland plants. And this holds water, and basically, like I said, it will overflow if it gets too high into the natural wetland, which is back here, or in the other direction. So there are kind of always overflow mechanisms for these. But really, this is going to allow the plants and the natural bacteria to do their work, to eliminate pollutants, to eliminate excess nutrients, to eliminate, the bacteria that we're not looking for, to really try and let sediment settle out here. So it's not going into our stormwater system and not headed down to Children's Beach. So I just want to say thank you to a bunch of people who have been amazing to work with and always are. Horsley Witten, SNAP Region 1 EPA, Land Bank Commission, who is very supportive of staff and these projects. The Land Bank staff is incredible. Town of Nantucket, working with Charles, Nantucket Land Water Council. Thank you, Emily, and Great Harbor Yacht Club for hosting us.
Thank you, Rachel. It's great, I think, to see some of these projects actually in process and some examples of how we can find some spaces and start to manage some of our stormwater. So I'm just going to ask, we can have kind of a shortish Q&A session, but I'm going to ask my three speakers to maybe assume the position on our panel chairs over here so that we can field just a few questions. And while they head over there, I also just want to share, it's really exciting for me personally to see what the Land Bank is doing with 65 and 67 Easton Street and how that property has come full circle, because a decade or so ago, I spent many hours from an advocacy perspective before the Conservation Commission trying to oppose proposed development of those properties because they were so wet and because it was so clear that there was a wetland there that was trying to be a wetland, even though it was being managed as lawn, and that was really important flood storage capacity that we needed to take advantage of. And there were a few lawsuits that ensued, but ultimately those properties ended up in the hands of the Land Bank. And now to see them actually restoring those sites to utilize them properly to treat our stormwater and to manage it, it really kind of warms my heart. So thank you, Land Bank. Okay, so I just want to see if anyone has any questions, any raised hands for our panelists. Yes. The question is, who owns the grassy area at Brant Point and how is that being managed? That, I think you're probably referring to the marsh that the Conservation Foundation owns. Mm-hmm. And I don't, Charles, do you want to?
Are you speaking about the circle? Yeah, that's town-owned. Vince has been looking at that because there are wetland plants growing. Excuse me?
So could
it's already growing wetland plants. It wants to be a wetland.
So thank you. That's a great opportunity that we can walk away from. Walk away with, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious, I'm not totally up to date on local legislation and such, but it seems like yard chemicals are a huge piece of problem. And, maybe addressing that is an easier step, if not politically, at least feasible.
So just to repeat the question, that yard chemicals and inputs seem to be a big part of the problem. And is that maybe easier or more feasible way to help address the nutrient loading and pollution into the harbor? If I understood the question. Does anybody want to address that? I'm happy to speak to it, but. Okay. Yes. So, I mean, the answer is yes. I think there was one slide that Charles showed from some of the early data from the Massachusetts Estuaries Project that definitely quantified and calculated inputs from fertilizer specifically. And we often speak at the Land and Water Council about that as really being our number one target because it is the lowest hanging fruit from a feasibility standpoint and an efficiency standpoint. Eliminating or drastically reducing the amount of fertilizer that we're using on our properties is the easiest way to improve the health of the harbor and the harbor ecosystem. That's definitely a bit of a cultural shift that we're trying to make with the island. But stormwater is certainly another element and component of that, but you're absolutely right. Those types of inputs are significant. Follow-up?
Quick follow-up. So is there legislation? And if so, is there enforcement?
I feel like I must have planted you over there. So the question was, is there legislation or are there regulations about that, and is there enforcement? Nantucket has, I think, probably some of the best fertilizer regulations in Massachusetts. They were first implemented under the Board of Health around 2012. There's a requirement on Nantucket for anyone who's commercially applying fertilizer to have a license that they receive from the town, a certification. Unfortunately, no, there's not much enforcement of that program. I think it's really important to work as a community on a two-pronged approach to try to improve the enforcement and the communication around those regulations and around fertilizer use. And then also, as property owners, start to look at what we're doing on our properties and our yards and make choices about how we want to change that. So it's sort of the responsibility of the people applying the fertilizer, but also the responsibility of the people hiring the landscapers to apply the fertilizer. So I hope that helps to address it.
Emily, I'd like to add a little bit to that.
Please.
Can you hear it? Okay. If and when we get to the watershed permit, a huge part of that is education of the public and looking for help in reducing all the nutrient loading into the harbor. There will be some enforcement, but it's really hard to enforce how much fertilizer landscapers are applying to private lots. But enforcement, I mean, education will help, and that will be part of watershed permit. The town will be responsible for really doing a lot of education programs.
And just for a little plug, the Land and Water Council is just starting to launch a new initiative that we're calling Grow Native for Nantucket. And we hope to really pursue that program and expand on it further in the coming years. And that's really an effort to educate and encourage property owners on Nantucket to embrace native species and a more Nantucket natural landscape because of all of the benefits that that can provide. So keep your eyes out for Grow Native for Nantucket. Any other questions? Yes.
About water quality testing. Has Children's Beach customarily been water tested? It's a heavy usage area.
So the first question is from a water quality standpoint. Has Children's Beach regularly been sampled and monitored because it's a heavy use area? I know that's not your department,
Yes, it
Charles.
has. It's not my department, but Natural Resources has been, and they do weekly sampling for bacteria. That's why part of our sampling is going to include bacteria to see if and it does get closed after storm events because of the bacteria, but we'd like to find the source of that bacteria through the stormwater system if we can. It may be simple, it may be some tourist doggy pooping, a block from Children's Beach. I don't know. And that can skew all the samples that we collect, but at least we'll be attempting. Nobody has been sampling the actual stormwater up till now. And I think we need to at least look at the sources of bacteria and the nutrients in the stormwater.
And then the other question, I see a lot, this breaks my heart. When I walk in town, I see, and the beaches, I see a lot of cigarette butts. And it's like the bane of my existence. Will these constructed wetlands sort of filter out cigarette butts before they get to the harbor, like what you showed us with the little pathway? Or where are those going to end up? Are there any mitigating practices for that problem?
So the second question was specifically around cigarette butts and how the constructed wetlands and stormwater infrastructure manages debris, specifically like cigarette butts. Do any of you guys want to address that?
I think it's a combination. It's a combination of gray and green infrastructure. So first of all, I'll tell you that the cigarette butt that was on my slide was driving me nuts. And if I was better at using Photoshop, I would have Photoshopped it out. But I'm not. So anyways, it made it through. But what I did think is that it will get caught in those stones, and we will have to maintain those. We'll have to clean out those leaves. We'll have to clean out whatever detritus ends up in there. So from that green infrastructure perspective, yes, that will take care of that. But maybe you guys could also speak to the water quality units.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm not an engineer, but these practices are highly engineered for you not to notice that they have sediment forebays and debris trapping systems that are intentionally put in place to kind of hold some of that stuff, so then the water can go through and then it can move out. And we've just learned over the years that the maintenance piece, you have to make it really easy to maintain because nobody maintains anything anyway. But if you make it simple, here's this one tiny spot at the inlet, go in there, shovel it out, Charles, and get all those cigarette butts or whatever, instead of having to go through the whole wetland and try to move, try to pull those things out. So, there is an effort from the engineering side to design them for maintenance, but you're not supposed to notice that.
And I is an engineer, and a lot of the structures that were put in place even 20 years ago do have an area to collect floatables and things like cigarette butts. The issue is the maintenance. Some of these things were just thrown in as an afterthought because DEP said that they eliminate 90% of the total suspended solids or something like that. The problem was that there was no O&M schedule included in that, and things are underground, they're forgotten. And a lot of these structures, some of them we went to were filled to the top with sediment. Some of them had phragmites growing out the top of the manhole covers. The oil and grease was, an inch thick. So the manufacturers of these structures say after every major storm, you've got to go in and you've got to suck the floatables out and you've got to remove the sediment and you have to stay on top of it. Well, that hasn't been the case, but if we do go to any of these, the MS4 program or mirror that program, or if we go the watershed permit route, which I hope we do, those maintenance programs have to be written down and we have to follow them.
Yes, in the back.
I think it was Ann that said that she lived in all these communities where they had stormwater utility fees. So my question is that something that has to start at the state level, or can we locally kind of get that going in kind of meeting, or?
Thank you, Dave, for that question. So the question is about the stormwater funding sources and fees, and if that's something that can be done here on Nantucket, if it has to start at the state level, how we could enact a program similar here.
The University of Western Kentucky has been, for the last 15, 20 years doing a survey of all the stormwater utilities in the US. And I sort of showed a map. I didn't talk about it, but there was a map that showed where all those were. There's over 2,500 of them. They think there's probably 3,000. And what's nice about their survey is that they sort of track some of the different elements of what kind of stormwater utility, how did you get it, what's the monthly fee, how is it based, all that. So you could get into that if you wanted to find some of those details. And they put out reports like every 2 years, which are fun to read. I think to answer your question, my experience has been it has to almost always come at the local level. Unless you have a state that says the municipalities cannot do this sort of thing, I don't know of a state that has said you have to do this. But it's mostly the municipal level. It's really the ones that I've been involved in or personally have had to pay into. It's come from the sewer department. It's tacked onto my monthly water bill, sewer or water. It's tacked on there, and stormwater, sort of that third leg of municipal water, infrastructure. And so it's never been really a big deal. Up here, it's a little bit bigger of a deal with communities talking about, we don't want taxes, we don't want fees, we don't want, whatever. But as these communities are having to build these stormwater programs, you really have to have this predictable funding source so you know how to budget out next year. Like, we need a truck, Vector truck, so we could suck out these manholes. I need 3 more staff. I need a landscaper because Rachel's building all of these, green infrastructure projects everywhere, and nobody knows anything about plants. She's
got her own crew. She can handle that.
All right, maybe you. I should have.
Charles, do you want to touch on that from the local level?
Massachusetts has enabled towns to put together these enterprise funds for stormwater, and a lot of towns have gone that way. We have started that program. We presented to town administration late this winter. We're meeting. We have met with our consultant, Hazen and Sawyer, and they're putting together a draft of regulations based on other towns in Massachusetts mostly, but also other New England states. We'll probably present regulations to the select board late fall, and then we're hoping that we can present those to the public at the town meeting in the spring, and we look for everyone's support. Most of these the fees are very modest, and for property owners, say in less urban areas on Nantucket, it'll be a basic fee, and in town where there's more intense development, it'll be based on impervious surface. So if you've got the entire lot is covered by a building, you'll pay more for the services of the roads and everything downtown, the sidewalks, and all those services.
Great. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for your attention. Before we wrap up, I'm going to invite Leah Hill to come up for just a moment.
If you don't know, the town has developed a coastal resilience plan back in 2020, and that looks at 40 recommendations to be implemented to mitigate flooding and erosion out to 2070. Actually, one of those recommendations is to create a comprehensive stormwater management plan. So ties in very nicely.
We're on it.
Charles is on it. I'm also the staff liaison for the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Peter Brace here is the chair for that. And so they advise the select board on kind of all things coastal resiliency related and offer recommendations. So Peter's just going to give a brief update about the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee.
Can you hear me? I have a pretty deep voice. So with our coastal resilience plan done, and us now working on near future coastal resilience projects, what we're doing now really is outreach, trying to get you to listen to us, to hear us, that the water is coming up, you have to be ready for it, and we're going to help you do that. And so what are we doing? Okay, this winter we did a survey of the Nantucket Civic League, helping us get a sense of what property owners' concerns are. We're broadening that survey. And if you look in your, that's the wrong one. Look in your package, you'll see a little card like this. You can then take that survey, and that will inform us what your concerns are. The more people that tell us what's going on, the better job we can do to help. To steal a phrase that our town manager uses, keep Nantucket, Nantucket. We've also worked with realtors on the island. We got that. Create a guide for realtors and home buyers on how you guys can, people who are buying properties, learn what the possible risks are, where your house is, where it's located. And finally, we are and have been working with our local regulatory boards. We've had them at our meetings, chairman and vice chairman of those boards, planning board, HDC, CONCOM, that's Conservation Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Airport Commission, to learn what their interactions with the public are like. What are they getting from the public, if anything at all, about coastal resilience, and do they have any questions of us? We're going to be then reviewing the regulations of those boards to see how we can incorporate coastal resilience policies that will help us in the long run. So if you guys have any questions, we're right here. Otherwise, please take the survey. Please take the survey. You can see us on first and third? Second and fourth Tuesdays of each month. We are, that's when we're meeting. We meet online, so anyone can attend. Read the plan online on our website, our page of the town's website. Please read the plan. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Leah and Peter.